When it comes to good communication, we all know it's an essential skill for establishing and maintaining positive relationships. On top of that, in the workplace, good communication leads to better outcomes, including stronger teams, better collaboration, and overall clarity. But what exactly is good communication? The reality is, what defines good communication can change from one language and one culture to another. So if you're struggling to make positive first impressions, build rapport, or maintain open communication channels in English at work, this lesson is going to help. If you don't already know, I'm Anne-Marie with Speak Confident English. Everything I do here is designed to help you get the confidence you want for your life and work in English. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that a few months ago I did a lesson titled Demonstrating Charisma at Work. If you enjoyed learning about the power of charisma and how to demonstrate it in English, then this lesson is a great follow-up. Throughout this lesson today, you'll gain insight on how to improve your communication skills at work so that you are using positive communication with your team, coworkers, and clients. To help us navigate through this lesson successfully, I'm going to share with you 4 specific positive communication techniques. With each one, I'll also introduce strategies to help you be successful. As you watch, I recommend that you take note of the techniques and strategies that feel most comfortable to you or align with your communication style. As you know, we all communicate differently, and there may be techniques that feel like they fit you best, and if that's the case, make sure to take note of them. As always, I'll also include example phrases, sentence starters, and more so that you have all the language you need to implement these positive communication techniques. Technique number 1 is use positive language. It seems obvious that in a lesson on positive communication, we want to make sure we know that we're selecting positive words or vocabulary when we communicate. Making positive word choices is a surefire way to show respect and immediately get off on the right foot in a conversation. And here are 3 strategies you can use to help you implement this technique. Strategy number 1, select polite words. Selecting polite words allows us to always show respect and maintain a positive tone. Listen to these 2 example sentences. Number 1, stop talking. I need a moment to think. And number 2, could you hold your thoughts for a moment? I just need a moment to think. Of those 2 example sentences, did one of them sound more polite and respectful to you? Most likely it was sentence number 2, but why? First, I used modals. For example, could you wait for a moment, and I'd like. And second, I made it a request as opposed to a demand. The second strategy you can use for selecting positive language is particularly useful when giving feedback. Rather than using negative words, we can use the negative form of positive words. I know that sounds complicated, so let me give you an example. Let's imagine that one of your coworkers has proposed a new service or product that just doesn't fit with your company's mission or vision. Rather than say, that's not what I'm looking for, or that's not the right fit, you could use something like, that's not as innovative as the products we're hoping to compete against. Did you notice the difference? Let me say those again. The first option is, that's not a good fit, or that's not what I want. Number 2, that's not as innovative as the products we're hoping to compete against. Here's another alternative. I understand you worked hard to come up with an innovative solution, but it wasn't along the lines of our company mission. In those 2 alternative sentences, I'm using some rather complex structures that allow me to use negative forms of positive words. For example, in that first alternative, I'm using the positive word innovative, but in a slightly negative form, using that not as innovative as. In the second example, I'm using positive language such as I understand, and then going on to say, but it wasn't along the lines of our company mission. Those little adjustments in our speech, again, help us make positive language choices. And now the third strategy we can use for this technique is minimize negative connotations through qualifiers. Qualifiers are words like slightly, a bit, not quite, a little, kind of. And these qualifiers soften a negative tone. So again, if we're providing critical feedback, we can certainly minimize the negativity by utilizing those qualifiers. Here's a good example. Rather than say, "It's taking too long to complete this report," you could add a qualifier to minimize the negative connotation and say, "It's taking a bit longer than I expected for this report to be finished." And now technique number 2 for positive communication at work is to be sincere and show interest. Everyone loves to be listened to, and everyone loves to feel interesting. By showing genuine interest in someone else, you're giving them that gift and working to establish or maintain an overall positive relationship. Beyond using body language and active listening skills to show that you're paying attention or that you have sincere interest in someone else, you can also use open-ended questions. Doing so not only allows you to learn more about a person's experience, but it also allows you to potentially find connections that you can build stronger relationships upon. Some great examples of question starters you can use for an open-ended question include, "Tell me more about." Tell me more about how you got started in this profession. Or, "What is your experience with?" What is your experience with this software? What is your experience with tackling these challenges at work? What is your experience in leadership? And a third similar question starter is, how was your experience? How was your experience at the conference? How was your experience giving the presentation? These simple questions are extremely effective in showing your sincere interest in others, helping you make positive first impressions, and maintaining strong relationships. And now the third technique for positive communication at work is use I and validate you. If you've watched some of my previous lessons on professional communication in English, then you know how powerful I statements can be when sharing our opinions or giving feedback, particularly when we're sharing opinions that are in opposition to others or in giving critical feedback. On top of that, using I statements is a great way to take the spotlight off of another person and put it on yourself, which is important when we need to set clear boundaries or, again, provide critical feedback. Here are 2 strategies to embrace that technique. Strategy 1, use I statements when giving feedback to avoid placing blame or increasing the tension. We all know that giving feedback and receiving feedback is already difficult. So here are some effective sentence starters to help you do that. "I've noticed that you're great at," and "I'd like to help you improve in." In that example sentence, I'm validating the other person by letting them know some areas where I see a lot of strength, and I'm using that as an opportunity to introduce areas for improvement as well. Here's another way to do that. "I'm impressed with, however, I think we need to work on." A second way to embrace this technique is to use similar sentence patterns when you need to set clear boundaries at work. For example, "My expectations are," and "I think." Again, we're using those I statements to reduce tension and avoid placing blame. Another example, "Thank you for, however, I don't feel comfortable with." Let me share an example of how we might use that. Imagine one of your coworkers has recently taken over one of your projects, and that was not something you wanted to have happen. Rather than simply feel angry and say nothing about it, you can use this strategy to effectively express your frustration and set some boundaries. And you can do that with the sentence structure I just shared. "Thank you for taking charge of contacting our clients. However, I don't feel comfortable doing minimal work. And going forward, I'd like us to maintain an equal workload." Do you notice there I'm not placing any blame? I'm validating something the other person has done, but I'm also setting clear boundaries by stating what my expectations are and using those I statements. And now our fourth and final technique for positive communication at work and on teams is to recognize and show support. Recognizing others, whether it's because they've finished a challenging task or accomplished something, and showing support when it's needed, are effective ways of showing appreciation. And that leads to lasting, strong relationships in the workplace. Showing recognition and support also help others to feel valued and heard. So here are 2 ways you can do that with sincerity. Strategy number 1, compliment others when it's appropriate. Now, when I say when it's appropriate, what I mean is when someone has done something significant, or perhaps they've finished a particularly challenging task. Maybe it's been a tough week for everyone at work, but you want your team to know that you have valued their time and input. Here are 4 great sentence starters to help you give compliments at work. Number 1, I appreciate. I appreciate the extra time you've given this week. A second option, I'm proud of you, or I'm proud of your. I'm proud of your team's efforts in successfully getting that contract finished. A third option, you did a fantastic job with. You did a fantastic job with that presentation. And one more, you truly excelled in. You truly excelled in over-delivering to our clients. A second strategy you can use to implement this technique with sincerity is to support others, whether it's supporting their ideas, their opinions, or providing hands-on support when they're struggling to meet a deadline or get something finished. When you show support to others, not only is it a form of recognition in English, but it's also a way of introducing a culture of open communication at work. If you're struggling with how to put your words together to effectively show support or empathize with others at work, here are a few options. I understand this will be difficult, or I understand that this is new. However, I'm here for you if you need any help. Although this task has some challenges, I know you have the skills necessary to complete it. And finally, I know the initial approach wasn't successful. Might I suggest? And then offer your suggestion. Here's a common situation where this strategy might be particularly useful. Imagine that someone new has just joined your team and they're feeling a bit of anxiety about a particular task that is challenging for everyone. To show that you are supporting your new team member and showing empathy, you could say, I understand that this is all very new. However, if you need any advice, I'm here to help. And with that, you have 4 techniques that you can immediately begin implementing for positive communication in English at work and on your team. To finish up, I have a couple of questions for you. At the start of this lesson, I recommended that you take note of the techniques and strategies that align with your communication style. So I would love to know which one seemed most compelling to you. What strategy are you most excited about implementing in your English communication? And my second question, did you have a moment of insight or an aha moment while listening to this lesson? Again, at the start, I talked about how positive communication differs from one language and culture to another. Perhaps there's something you experienced in the past that just didn't make sense, but now, suddenly it does. You can share your thoughts, questions, and comments with me in the comment section below. If you found this lesson useful to you, I would love to know, and you can tell me in one very simple way. Give this lesson a thumbs up here on YouTube, and while you're at it, subscribe to this channel so you never miss one of my Confident English lessons. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.